Hey guys.
What's up?
Hi.
So we are doing a fun series where we're asking some married couples some really fun questions about all the juicy details of marriage. And today we have some very great guests with us. We got Chris and Crystal Lineberger, Greenville campus pastor, first lady.
I think I'm the second lady. Jessica's the first lady.
True. Has anybody called you the second lady?
No, but I do often like to think of myself as the second lady.
That's just
I did
weird.
one time at a women's event, but like a leadership meeting.
Wow.
Jessica introduced herself as the first lady, and so I said, well, I'm the second lady.
That's amazing.
That's the first time.
That's so great.
It's not written down anywhere.
I've known you so long. I feel like that would be a fun title to call you.
I'm about it. Second lady.
Yeah,
This
second
whole
lady.
series, I am second. I'm okay to be
Yeah, there we
second.
go.
That's right.
That's true. That's true.
I'm totally.
You guys are an awesome couple. And so as we talk today, as we get started, I'm just going to give you guys a couple minutes, introduce yourselves, and talk about like your particular marriage story, like how you guys met, got married. Just take a couple minutes and we get a different
version.
perspective. You guys can either joint tell it or you can bounce back.
Sure. So we've been married now 15
Almost 16.
and a half years, almost 16 years. It'll be 16 years in July. We met at church where I was a youth pastor at. When we actually met, it was very brief, but then I didn't even know that she existed for another few months because I was like stuck in the kids program. That sounds bad. I was serving faithfully. I was serving faithfully in the kids program. So I didn't see adults for a long time. But
Well, I also was in a stage of life where I was coming in right when church started and leaving as soon as it was over.
she was one of those that she snuck in, she
You're
snuck
not
out.
a lingerer.
But
Well,
I
not
noticed
at that time.
that she was still there. And when I actually could interact with her, we kind of interacted as friends for 2 months. And then after that, crazily, we got engaged. And then 4 months later, we got married. So we technically only knew each other, even as friends, for, 7 months total before we got married?
So just to back up a second for those that don't know you. So like, was there a dating period? Was there
Yeah,
like
he
you're
said
just
we
friends?
interacted as friends. That is not
We
the
were
case.
just friends, and I was
We
like,
really,
do you want to be married?
I'll tell
Yeah,
you
let's
the
go.
real story.
I was about to say two sides to a story.
Yeah.
Give us the real story.
Yeah,
Griswold.
we officially met in August when he was going around meeting everybody. Then I didn't see him again. Well, we didn't talk again until November when I went to a kids program, and he
You were
assaulted
venturing
me,
out.
asking me if I.
You just
that's a
lost
strong
half
word.
the crowd. I did not.
I walked in the door,
I
and he was
beelined
like-
to her.
Beelined, better word. He was like, "Hey, don't you work with kids?" So anyway, then he used that as an excuse to get my contact information, and then.
We needed help in the kids program.
But the first email said
They
nothing about
needed
the
help.
kids
We
program.
needed it.
Needed help.
She was a teacher.
And then, so that was November. And then we started hanging out,
Very end of December.
yes,
Was it?
right after Christmas break.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then,
March
That-
1st.
yes. And then by New Year's Eve, we knew that there was something. And then it was a couple days later that he expressed his interest.
She kept looking at me and I kept looking at her. And I was like this unwritten thing that was like,
Okay.
we're definitely into each other. There's a crowd around us, but I'm just going to let her know that I see that you're interested and I also am interested. And so are we both interested. And
So how old were you guys at the time?
24.
23.
We got married when we were 24, so 23, because our birthdays are both in the spring. So
Okay.
then March 1st, we got engaged. We both then turned 24, March and April, and then we got married in July.
Okay.
And it was awesome.
So there was like a whole period of like a week where we were trying to figure out if we liked each other. We knew, but then it was
Yeah.
said, and then we dated for.
There was a lot of God
You were
involved
friends
in our
for
feelings.
2 months.
We interacted
A lot of God.
as friends.
Yeah.
But then now, we had the 5-year plan to not have children. And a year later into our marriage, we got pregnant. And now we have 3 children. Jericho is 13, almost 14. Journey is 12. And then Jasher is 8. So 2 girls and a boy. So our lives are full, fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way, full and fun. That's great.
I would describe you guys with those 2 words for sure.
great.
For sure.
Busy and overwhelmed could be the other.
In some seasons.
All perspective.
Yeah, exactly. So the context of these videos, for those that you maybe watching this, you have no idea, is we did a marriage workshop not too long ago, dating this video. This is 2023. So we did this workshop. You guys were panelists, or people asked you guys questions. They asked panels this question, and we didn't get to all of them. So we wanted to take some time, do a video, get through some of these extra questions because some of them were like really, really good. We just didn't have time to get to them. So we compiled some. We've done another video that maybe you've been able to watch. If not, go check that one out as well. Very different perspectives in both videos. But this one, we're going to start out with some fun. So you mentioned your kids. So I'm just going to read some of the questions that people submitted that we didn't have time to get to. Just let you guys answer as long as you want to, however you want to. It's going to be fun. So this first one, it talks about having kids. So life with multiple kids gets hectic. Sometimes you feel like you and your spouse are merely parenting partners, household teammates, and or roommates in life. How do you prevent or fix that when, quote unquote, dating is easier said than done? So everybody says, you need to date your spouse, but it's like you got kids going crazy. It's not always easy. Yeah. So what do you guys say to this person?
I mean, do you want to start? I want me to start. You go.
Okay.
She's got something to say.
My one first initial thought is that I think you need to reframe your idea of what dating is. So dating now for us does not look the same as it did when we had no kids, or even when our kids were young and we would get a babysitter. We have to try and take advantage of the small time. So dating might be going out and talking on the back porch for 15 minutes at a time, or in the morning we'll sit on the couch after we've done our devotion and talk for 15 minutes. There are times that we will have quote unquote
dates.
Right, like what you traditionally think of as a date. But I think that has been one of the keys, is that we have to understand that our season does not look the same as it used to look, and so dating is also not going to look the same as it used to look. Yeah,
it's definitely, and this is, I feel like most people will say this, but it's quality over quantity. We have 3 kids, they're all in sports, we're in ministry, there's a lot going on, and so quantity does not exist. We do not have tons of time for one another, but we do have pockets, and if we can be really intentional about the time we have, even like usually when the kids are unconscious, when they're sleeping. So before they wake up, we do have time together that we get to connect every day. We connect with God, then we connect with one another. And then at night, we put the kids down, and our older ones, they may stay up, but we create independence in them. So that's we're having our time now. And then the other thing is just communication and scheduling. So for the legit dates, yes, that means we have to get babysitters. Our oldest one is now at the age where she can be a babysitter. So that is huge. But for those of you that are listening that, I'm going to have to pay someone to watch my 2 or 3 kids and then pay for an outing out. Man, this is turned into a $200 event to go.
It's a thing.
Yeah, it's turned into an expensive thing. So schedule those times out. And then communicate things like, let's just take a walk without the kids. And that can be a way that we can connect every day or every night, or just
we don't do that every day.
But be creative. My whole thought is every day you should connect, but you can be creative in the way you do that. And make sure it's quality over quantity.
That's really good. So, I feel this. I only have 1 child. So 3 is crazy talk, but
he's about to have 2.
About to have 2. But I think what you guys said is really, really good as far as scheduling that stuff out, taking advantage of the little moments. I recently had a conversation with a couple that's about to get married, and really tried to stress and emphasize the amount of time you have right now is unprecedented, and you will never have it. It will never happen again until later in life.
Yes,
it's but once you cross that threshold, you realize just how much time you took for granted. So it's if you're watching this and you don't have children yet, this is a beautiful season of your life, and you think you don't have time, but you go home and watch TV for 2 hours.
Right.
It's you have time
for sure,
and you should take advantage of it. So that's beautiful. So I'm going to up the ante on this one. We're going to just dive straight in. Okay,
I like it.
Started with kids, so it's intimacy on top of this. So you guys, it's with all the children, with all the crazy schedule, with trying to date your spouse. It's at the end of the night, you're exhausted. What? Real talk. So how do you guys prioritize intimacy in all of that chaos? Like, how does that work for you guys? What advice would you give to somebody who's struggling to prioritize intimacy?
I'd say quality over quantity again. Make sure, and honestly, it is funny because it is true. When we kind of saw some of these questions beforehand, like, we were just talking through, and it was great because you want to be intimate with your spouse. That's one of the blessings of marriage, the freedoms of marriage. But when you do have children, the time that used to be available where you're just home alone all the time, that doesn't exist anymore. But when you are together, being intimate, I would say quality, make sure that you are pleasing your spouse. And when I say that for us, I can't speak for everybody listening, but for us, like, I'm a guy, and I don't want to be TMI, but everybody that's listening understands, I'm going to have a great time because I'm a guy. It's a lot easier for me to have a great time. I don't know why, biologically, it just is.
Yep.
As a husband, though, if I can make sure that Crystal is having a great time and really enjoys our intimacy, she wants to have more of it more often. And so it's like, I do need to see this time together as this is not when I'm getting mine, or this is not for me. This is a time where we connect as married people. But man, I want her to want more of this. And so make sure it's good, fellas, for your wife.
Yeah.
I think we were also talking about this, which is funny, but kind of like you reframe what intimacy looks like. Like, we don't have, this is not a like, we're going to linger anymore. Right now it's like, we know what works. We're going to do what works.
15 years, baby. We got this.
We got it. We figured it out. And we don't need to just spend hours cuddling afterwards or before. It's like, get in, get out, get her done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm glad that she's saying that. You know what? I'm going to just write that. Hey, you actually said.
Just get her done. Just get her done, man.
You do know it works.
It does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people know this too. It's like intimacy doesn't start. It's not like you just go in the bedroom and you're like, all right, turn the intimacy button on. Yeah. It's like all the little things leading up to it, knowing your spouse's love language, those kinds of things. Sure. Like, how does that work for you guys? Like,
so I think this relates a lot to, you kind of talked about what life looks like with 3 kids. It is very hectic. And so for me, when he helps out with the to-do list, then intimacy becomes less of a to-do because I now have less on my to-do.
Yeah.
And so I think that is very helpful, and that makes me realize, he's
acts of service.
Me.
Is definitely like one of the love languages, that how she receives love. And so once I'm actually like understanding that, if I can serve her in all these kind of mundane things, they seem to me, it creates margin. And honestly, it helps her love me better and more. Yeah. And then we have time for one another. Yeah. And then just scheduling wise, because we do have 3 kids, like, hint, get sound machines for all your kids. Train them on noises. The reason I say this is because like 8:30 at night, our son Jasher still goes to bed before school. Sound machine's on. The kids know, just whether we're watching TV together or like mom and dad are going to have their time after a certain time. So like 9 o'clock and on. If the girls aren't watching something specific with Crystal, then it's like, well, me and Crystal are watching something, or we're having our time. And so it's like, we're not trying to be inconsiderate of the kids and their feelings, but it's like, we want them to know that we need our time together. So like, if our door is shut, I don't care if we're watching Netflix or if we're doing something else. Like, don't come in without knocking. If you need to lock the door, lock the door. But it's like, it's one of those things that if we were waiting till everything was perfect, they're all asleep.
Now
the dogs are not restless, because we have 3 dogs as well, 3 kids and 3 dogs. So like, our house is full. Like, no, create distraction for your kids, and then basically prioritize intimacy, and it will happen.
That's great. I
think that's just radical enough.
Everybody watching, listening,
get some sound machines.
Get sound machines.
Start them young on sound machines,
and just get her done.
There we go.
And communicate. If you are lacking intimacy, someone does need to be able to bring that up, not in a critical way, but like, I want to connect with you. It's been a while. And some things we kind of joke about in the crazy busy seasons, we call them drought seasons. And I said this on the panel, but it's like, just like, I guess, in Africa or in India, where they literally have seasons of droughts, they also have monsoon seasons. Yeah. So if you're in a drought season, communicate the monsoon is coming. But you need to communicate that.
There you go.
Yeah.
monsoons, get her done, droughts. People, I think married people are following though. I feel like that's
great.
True. All right, we're gonna pivot a little bit. So this person didn't really ask a question, but I do think it's really beneficial for you guys' context, and maybe you can talk about this from a, how it's progressed over the years as well. But they just said tips for financial conversations. So obviously finances, I think it's one of the trifecta for me in marriage. You've got sex, you've got money, and you've got like family. So it's like, how are you going to handle all your family stuff, visiting, holidays, all that fun dilemma of like how close you should be to one another's families. Like that's just a whole thing that a lot of assumptions. Then you've got, sex, which obviously you guys have addressed a little bit, but it's like money. So like, yeah, how do you guys have those conversations? How do you approach that? Yeah, maybe talk about some of the things you've done in the past that maybe didn't work, whatever. Yeah.
You want to start?
Well, I feel like maybe our relationship with money is a little bit different because we started out basically as church planters, and so
we have none. Therefore, we
really
never argue about it. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah. So I think because of kind of where we started, we didn't really start out well. Maybe for the first few months, but we never started out this like dual income, no kids family. So we weren't used to having all these resources to do what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that set our groundwork just a little bit differently than some people, but neither one of us are super into money and budgeting and all that, for good or for bad.
Yeah, they always say in premarital, like one of you guys is gonna have to actually like keep up with the finances, run the finances, and we knew that, but we neither one of us like are fueled by that, and so we've actually swapped over the years of like, oh, she's in charge, she's been in charge for a couple of years, then now she hates it, I'm gonna be in charge for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But same thing, communication's a huge. You tag your it.
Yeah, I'm done.
You get the next 3 years.
I'm tired of looking at this. It stresses me out.
Communication is pretty real. I mean, sharing, I don't know how people have their bank accounts or their resources, but if you're married, sharing those bank accounts and those resources to me is pretty huge, because therefore, if I'm trying to figure out how much did I spend? And I go to the bank account and it's like, I can see both of all of our stuff, like from the very get-go. If I'm overspending or she's overspending, or we know something's coming up, like we both can see everything. That's a tip. And you may have different thoughts about that, but that's definitely been beneficial for us. The other thing is we do try to come together every month to work on our budget. Like we know our income and we kind of know our average output, but like every month is so different between sports, between even birthday parties. Now we have 3 kids and they all are pulled in different directions for birthday parties. We have to come together every month and like, what is up for this month that we need to adjust or change based off of? We have 4 birthday parties and the average gift is $15 to $20. Like, do we really have to give gifts to our kids' friends? But if we didn't have those conversations and talk about that, then at the end of the month, we'd have $100 or so that's kind of unaccounted for. And it's very easy for us when we don't communicate to blame one another of, oh, it's because you went to Starbucks so many times. Oh, or it's because you did this so many times. And now the finances have become something that's like a wedge between us. When we're on the same team, we both want to win. It's communicating ahead of time. Get a budget tool. We use the Every Dollar app that comes with the Ramsey. If you're a part of Ignite Church, you actually get, I think until August, all the free resources from Ramsey Plus.
Yeah.
The Every Dollar app has been great. It connects to all your accounts.
It's very helpful.
And you can see in real time how much you have left in your budgets, and then we can come together. We share an account with it. So those things are helpful. But
I think also just being honest about like your needs and desires. Like,
yeah.
I'm not a huge shopper. And so maybe that helps. But there are times where I'll say like, hey, I really want to go get a couple of new sweaters. And, we kind of talk about that and have a real conversation like, maybe this is not the month for that, or okay, fine, but can you go to TJ Maxx and not Anthropology? I don't go to Anthropology, but you know what I mean?
We wish our house looked like Anthropology because it's decorated awesome.
That's really great,
just
though.
Being honest about like, listen, I really haven't gotten anything new for the past few months. I really want a new pair of shoes or whatever it is.
And then other things, typically we will set guidelines that if it's something over $100, like maybe we know that it's in the realm of, oh, this is investment, we could spend this. Usually if it's over $100, like we know we need to communicate about that. Typically for guys, it's not, I don't really want to buy that much other than like food, but when I do want to buy something, it could be expensive. Making sure I'm communicating that. So that way it's like a joint decision. Even if she doesn't want the thing that I feel like we need, she understands that I have the best, I guess, stance. Like I'm not trying to just be selfish in the purchase. I think we need this, our family needs this. So I'm including her in even my wants as well.
Yeah. Sense. No, that's great. No, I think that's huge. It makes me think, like you talk about communicating, it makes me think of like you said, I'm not a big spender, but like every once in a while, but it's like, have you communicated with each other? Like I'm a spender, I'm a saver. It's like, if you haven't really set those ground rules of like, this is how I grew up, this is like what I am used to, and like, why are you doing this?
Right.
Like just talking about it is so huge. It's like, it doesn't have to be something where you're accusing or whatever. It's just you're saying how you feel.
This is how I am.
This is how I'm wired or whatever. And it's like, help me understand how you're feeling, whatever it might be. And it's like, yeah, if you're just sitting there internalizing like, man, they get all this stuff and like, I want something, but you never say it. It's like, how do they know? So like, that's great. I like that a lot. Okay. On a similar notion, really important. This person asked, do you study the Bible together? One. And they, I think, assume maybe you do. And they say, what do you recommend for people who maybe have different study approaches and it causes conflict? So over the years, have you guys studied together, apart? And how does that work for you guys?
So in the early years, we kind of did what a lot of people will do, and we'll try to find like couples devotionals. And we kind of we mentioned this on the panel as well, but there's not, I'll be like honest with you, there's not really great couples devotionals. So if somebody can figure that lane out, do it well, and you may be successful, because on the market, all the ones that are out there are pretty lame.
We have not looked in a while.
It's been a while.
There could be something out there.
True. Yes. So that's possible. But we did try to do things like together, literally, and some of those things we're literally reading scripture together and then talking about it afterwards. And that was like, okay, we've actually gone through devotions where we're just doing the questions, they put us in a setting, and then we answer the questions together. Like I said, that's been okay. The thing that has worked for us is honestly the latter. Like she has her quiet time with the Lord, her personal relationship with God. I have mine. And then we're going through completely separate things, and we're journaling, we're writing them down. And then like every morning we still come together and talk about life. We don't necessarily talk about, what did you read? What are you learning? Sometimes we do, but a lot of times, because we're kind of both in ministry, like Crystal's very involved in the Bible studies that the women are doing. Sometimes we'll talk about the things that are going on in our life, and then we try to bring God into those situations. And some of the things we've been learning on our own, then we get to apply that in real conversation with one another. Okay. And so that's kind of how it's been really, really good to do that, because I see her doing her quiet time every day. She sees me doing my quiet time every day. So there's accountability there. And our quiet times are usually from like 6 in the morning to about 6:30, because you're tell them what you're doing now.
I'm doing the Bible recap, and it's basically,
I've heard great things about that. Yeah,
it's the Bible in a year, but it comes with kind of like a little recap, so it helps you really understand. I'm in Numbers right now, which,
she loves Numbers.
It's really not exciting, but it is kind of neat to see the history, and she connects things, which is neat to see. So I'm doing that.
Yeah, Numbers is a fun one. It has a lot of connecting to like the New Testament, in particular. But it's like, if you don't know, that's hard to pick up on all the time. So that's really cool.
And then I go through a devotion called Utmost for His Highest. I've been doing it for years, and it puts me in the Bible after I read the devotion. Then I read a chapter of the Bible that the devotion's from, and then I journal all the things. And that's been working really well for us. Now, as a family, we do get together every day. And I know this sounds crazy, but it has worked now for more than a year. And Monday through Friday, we get together every day, of the work week. And we do a 10-minute devotion together. We pray together, and we just go through scripture together. And I'm just teaching the kids and the family. We started with the Gospels. We did some Old Testament stuff that I knew that the kids would think we're not in Numbers. I did some exciting things that I knew that the kids would love. And we just finished Acts. Literally today, we finished Acts. So that's how we pray together and as a complete family. But we've also just, like, if Crystal's going through a hard time or she's having hard conversations, I need to be the guy that's like, hey, let's pray about this now. Like, I'm not neglecting praying with her or over her and vice versa. Yeah. And that's how we need to be. The latter part of that question said, if it's creating conflict, I would say, like, maybe as a husband, in your mind, I'm supposed to be the spiritual leader. So I've developed this incredible plan, and my wife is not into the plan. It's not working. And that could be frustrating. That could cause conflict. Yeah. I would say, look, I think you have the best intentions if that's you, but really ask your wife, like, what's the best way for you to learn? What's the most fruitful things that you've ever done or been in that are helping you grow in your faith? Because it may be best that you do your own separate devotions and then come together and talk about what you're learning separately.
Yeah.
Or even maybe asking too, like, when you think of a spiritual leader, like, what does that look like to you? Because I mean, a lot of this we've talked about, I think the central theme is just communication, but sometimes we have expectations or we have notions of what something looks like, and it might look totally different from our spouse. And so just being able to communicate, like, this is actually what, when I think of you leading me or you leading our house, this is what I think of, or this is what I need.
Yeah. And so just really communicate, because if doing devotions should not be causing conflict. If it is, you may have to let go of, well, I had this great plan and the plan's not working, so therefore now it's frustrating and this person's not getting on board, so that's the frustration. Like, I kind of would surrender that and really ask, like, what's the best way that you can grow, and let me help facilitate that.
Yeah.
And I think also we kind of talked about this a little bit in the panel, but not being afraid to switch something up if it isn't working. I mean, we've been through seasons, like, for us now, we are choosing to do a family devotion because we feel like the age of our kids, like, that's really important that we're pouring into them in that way every day. But there have been seasons where maybe it was more important for us to really focus on our marriage and so just being able to be like, okay, now, like, I really want to do, like, a busy mom study or something like that, because that's the season that I feel like I'm in and that really burdens me or whatever. And so just being able to communicate, like, this has been really great, but I need to shift directions or.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Like, I think some people, like you said, they get pigeonholed on something, and it's like I would even say too, like, even at the beginning of it, it's like, come to the table with a few options, and it's like, we're gonna try this one, and if we don't like it, just because we started it doesn't mean we have to finish it.
Exactly.
You know, like that mentality is, like, very burdensome. You know, like, it's like, just let that go. It's like, this is about connecting with God, not about a checklist of that kind of thing.
And it doesn't have to look any particular way. Like, the way that you guys might do a couple's devotion might not look the same as we do it. And it doesn't have to be, it just has to be whatever works for you guys.
Yeah. That's super great. Super great. All right. So this one's going to be fun. Maybe fun, maybe not. This is a fun question. It says, how do you resolve fights without name calling or belittling one another or walking away? So they're fighting. It's not a matter of if they're fighting. They're fighting. It's like, how do you resolve these things without name calling, belittling, or being like talk to the hand and walking away?
You want me to start, or you start?
You should start, Chris.
I think I do remember in the very beginning of our relationship, you know, and it's funny because I preached a sermon. I don't know when you're going to watch this, but I preached a sermon and we talked about our first fight. And it's funny because until you've had some discussions or intense conversations or whatever you want to call them, you don't really know how to fight well until you learn that dynamic from your spouse, your partner. And when I realized that, like, Crystal actually processes things by going away, sometimes she's cried, but she needs time to process if we're having an argument, or maybe if I did say something that she didn't like. And I've had to be okay with allowing her to process that. So as far as the name calling and things like that, I would set clear boundaries. Once you realize, whoa, I didn't think this would be a big deal that I said this, but this is obviously, like, she's either being like, she's very sensitive to my tone, or she's very sensitive to a word that I used or whatever. Like, I do not need to use that word or that tone against her, because it's affecting, we're not arguing or just discussing anymore. I'm hurting her feelings. And once I realized that, I literally would go to the door and I'd knock on the door like, babe, let's talk about this right now. Let's deal with this right now. Like, I'm sorry, we're on the same team, but like, come on, we gotta resolve this now.
I want a hug right now.
Yeah, that's my, I'm sorry, we're on the same team. Let's be intimate, whatever it takes, whatever you do. Like, she's like, no, I don't want to look at you. I don't want to do anything. I will need time to process what's going on. And once I learned that that's how she kind of dealt with things, I had to be like, that's okay. This is who she is. This is who I've married. And I want her to collect her thoughts, her emotions, and all the different things, so that when we do talk again, we can come to a resolution. So part of that is making rules beforehand. If you already know, like, this is off limits, do not say this about me. Don't try to prove me wrong for the sake of being right. Like, this is not a God thing. You're just trying to like belittle me. You're trying to just push me down. If I see that you're doing that, like, I'm done with this conversation, kind of thing. You need to set those boundaries. One of the things that we did in premarital was like, no matter how much we're arguing or what it is, like, we're never going to use the D word, the divorce word. Like, we're not going to threaten, because we're fighting, I may threaten leaving, or I may threaten like completely just, I'm out, forget this. I mean, I don't even know who you are. Like, if I start using language like that, now the whole entire trust and union that we have, she could be questioning those things. So I would make sure that some things are off limits, and you just need to have those conversations, not in the moment, but probably beforehand. And so those are just a few things of like not to do, but you can probably tell me a lot of things that I need to not do that other husbands can learn from.
Well, I think, again, it all goes back to communication, knowing the other person's communication styles. There are times where I feel like I'm being a really effective communicator and I'm trying to efficiently speak my mind, but it is not perceived that way. And so we've had to kind of talk through, like, when you say it this way, it makes me feel like
what I'm hearing is this.
Also understanding that my perception is not always reality. And one of the things, we did a marriage conference here, and one of the favorite things that the speaker said was giving some little like key phrases. And mine that I love is, the story I'm telling myself is. So when you did X, Y, Z, the story that made me tell myself is. And so being able to communicate that in a way that's not, well, you da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, it's like, because of these things, I told myself this story. And I realize that it's a story, but that is how I'm feeling. And I think knowing your own communication styles and knowing how your partner communicates. Because for me, I do need time to process, but I also want to make sure I don't say something that I will regret later. But even in the moment, communicating like, okay, this is not productive anymore. I just need a break to think about it, process it, and then we'll come back together and figure it all out.
One of the things that I realized that I did unknowingly, I have the ability, and some others may have this ability, to kind of remember a lot of very specific details or things that she said that I will not bring up in the moment that she said these things, but I'll just kind of hold on to them. And I'm not holding on to them like as ammunition. But when we're arguing about something else that maybe I've actually done wrong in, like, or I forgot to do this.
You become historical.
I become historical. And all of these things that she's done wrong or that there were unmet expectations that I never told her, they just come out like, well, babe, remember the time that you did boom, 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 boom. And I can just list all these things out. And the great
Which
thing,
then feels like because it's typically me that's bringing like, hey, I'm a little bit frustrated or whatever. And so then when I bring my feelings and I'm met with, well, you, it makes me feel like nothing I said is valid.
And so I've actually learned myself that I just do that sometimes. So when there is something that she's done that does bother me in the moment, instead of actually pushing that down, because I'm a peacemaker. I want peace. So sometimes I'll just, for the sake of having peace, I'm not going to actually be honest with her about my feelings. I'm just going to push it down. Now it's like, babe, when you did that in the moment, this is when it feels like you're nagging or you're being critical or attacking. Like I've learned to just speak freely like that, and it's been so much better for us.
It has been very freeing. He used to say, I could tell he was frustrated, but he would say, I just love you. And I'm like, just say it. Say it. Because I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, until you tell me what I'm doing. I mean, I think this is always a work in process. I would not say that we've mastered the art of fighting well, but we've definitely learned a lot and we've grown a lot.
Yeah. And if you need to get help, get help. There was one, this was years ago, but she really was like, you know, I think Chris right now is more in love with the church than he is like me and the family. Like that was a real thing of like ministry, which is so crazy and busy. And so we actually went to a session with a guy that was awesome because he used to be a pastor. He understood that. He was married. He had multiple kids. And we were able to work through some things really just in one session that it really was just a communication breakdown of things that I was not communicating or I was choosing, but unintentionally choosing over my family. And so if you need help, go get help. And like, that's okay too.
And sometimes just having somebody that's an unbiased mediator.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing with counseling in general is like, it's like somebody who's not you, not someone close to you in your daily life, but it's like somebody that you can just bounce off of. It's almost like getting the stuff out of your head and it's like, and saying it out loud to another person is almost like, you know, saying it to you, it does kind of sound silly, you know? But I feel so justified when I say it in my head or to my spouse or whatever, you know, that's so true. That's great, guys. Those are a lot of really good nuggets in there. Go back, take some notes. For sake of time, we're going to move on. Couple last minute questions. So one of these is, this will be an easy one. Maybe easy, I don't know. One piece of advice you wish someone had told you early in your marriage, and you can briefly describe why you wish someone had told you earlier.
Don't get pregnant a year in when you have a 5-year plan not to get pregnant a year in.
Follow your plan.
Follow your plan. No, like honestly, for us, we do have a very fun, adventurous lifestyle, I think, even with our kids. But like one of the things that's awesome about you, Stephen, is that like, you do have a few years with Kaylin that you got to travel and you got to do these adventurous things because you didn't have a child like your first year into marriage. And I think for us, man, when I see young people that are like backpacking in Colorado or they're going on these crazy trips everywhere, I am like, you know what? That's going to be us in our mid or late 40s. And that's going to be okay because we're going to do it. Midlife crisis, you call it whatever it is. We're going to have freedom and we're going to go for it. But that is a way that we could have connected and built, you know, just these memories and experiences together because we had the time, we would have had the resources to do that. I think that's something I tell myself, you know, 15 years ago was like, hey, don't miss the birth control that one week.
Be more careful with birth control.
You've got it. Use it. Don't even skip a week.
There you go.
I think mine, I feel like it sounds like you should know this. It sounds very common sense. But to understand that the person that you married is not going to be the same person 16 years in. And a lot of that has been really good growth and really good change, but you also get to see another side of this person that you really never expected. I used to say all the time that Chris tricked me but I mean, part of this
sounds terrible.
I know, that's what I was going to say. But we didn't date very long. We really didn't have a lot of conflict leading up to that. And so we had to learn all of that. Obviously, he's still there. His heart is still there, but we are both very different people. And so you can choose to grow with each other or you can choose to grow apart. And it is a choice. So choose to grow with that person the more that you learn about them.
Yes, what you just said made me think of Tim Keller has a really great quote where he says that he's been married to 5 different women, but it's like it's the same woman over 20 plus years. It's just good. Like she's just changed. And like he's like, I'm the same way. She's been married to 4 or 5 different men. You know, it's like as I've had different milestones in my life, or like you said, midlife crisis. It's
Right.
like
Or the
it's
seasons.
that weird, those shifts in life that just cause you to think differently and act differently. That kind of stuff. That's really great. This last question kind of piggybacks a little bit off of what you were saying, Crystal. So we'll expand on that. This person asked, "What do you do if you're growing apart?" And they expanded a little bit. They said, if one of you is starting to enjoy doing more and more things without the other. So what would you guys say to this couple? Because it kind of feels like a hopeless question in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think, the question, it does sound hopeless, but the truth is a lot of people, as they grow, because they realize, this isn't the 18, 19, 20, 21, or however old you were when you got married kind of like person, that I really enjoy just kind of doing things on my own, and you become almost like roommates. I would say, you have to fight that. You have to be very intentional. There is a part of it, even Stephen, before we started, you used the word choosing. There's a part of this that I'm actually going to choose to find out who my spouse is at 45, at 55, at 65, or at 35 with 3 kids. I'm going to choose to grow with her, or I guess from her perspective, with him. So because our lives are different, our hobbies may even be different, let's pick some time that we can really reconnect. Because most people, I only knew her 2 months before we got engaged, but she's my friend. I love hanging out with her. I mentioned this the other day in the sermon, but she's ruthless on card games and other kind of games. She's very competitive, but I know that she loves those things. And so having and finding time that we can do what we used to do, but we're not as agile as we used to be. We don't have as much free time as we used to have, but hey, let's go take a picnic somewhere. We're going to plan an Airbnb trip or something. Let's go rent an Airbnb, and it's just going to be the 2 of us, and it may only be for a day, but we're doing that not to just enjoy the Airbnb or to get away. We're doing that to actually reconnect. And so we have to choose to, I want to actually find out, what does my spouse like? Let's do something that reignites a little bit of that friendship, because if you're just roommates and then you're intimate, you're roommates and you're intimate, it's you're missing this entire friendship relationship that the Lord has actually, you were supposed to establish at the beginning, that's supposed to last until you're dead. And I think you have to intentionally take a step towards that person. So
I'm going to go back to communication again, because I think it's also important to know each other and know, it's okay for you to, if you're an introvert, to be refueled by being alone, right? Yeah. I think some of us all need to check out for a little bit, and that's okay. But being able to communicate, hey, I would really just like to hang out with you. Is there something that you would like to do? Because I think we can both kind of get in our patterns of, I'm doing this, you're doing this, but being able to communicate, I really want to hang out with you. I really have missed you. You've been doing X, Y, Z a lot, and I miss you. Yeah. And so I think knowing your spouse and knowing what fuels them, but also being able to communicate your needs and your wants and your desires, and what you do to connect might look really differently. And we've kind of talked about that a little bit already, but finding things that you both enjoy doing together, but also still making time, intentional time for you to do things that fuel you alone and separate, and that's okay. But I think it's a balance of. Yeah,
and I know this is kind of like a Christian podcast as well. To be able to just go to the Lord and say, God, help me reconnect with my wife. Help me have a desire to be with her or understand her, even though I know we feel like we're miles apart, or we feel like we haven't connected in a long time. Go to the Lord to give you a burning desire for your spouse again, and be willing to do whatever it takes, I think, to connect where you both enjoy. And I know our time is almost up, but she likes to read books. I like to build fires and just sing very loudly. We have very different interests, but you know what we both love to do? We both love to eat great food. We do. So our dates or our time of connecting is typically over food, because we both enjoy that. We both need that. And so that's when we have great conversation. We'll plan a date or plan a time to go try out a new restaurant. But I'm not going to read a book with her because I don't really enjoy reading books. And she's not going to just get on stage or wherever and sing a song with me because she doesn't like doing that. Forcing us to do those things is not going to reconnect. But connecting where we both enjoy going out to nice restaurants or checking out a new spot, that's actually really great for our relationship.
That's great. Yeah. So much goodness in this conversation. So much goodness.
Let's go to a nice restaurant now. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of where I want to go for lunch today, just to love myself a little bit. It'd be great. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out, having this conversation.
Thank you, Stephen.
This has been fun. It's like I said, if you're watching this, listening to this, we did do another conversation, so go check that one out as well. A very different perspective. Couple in a very different season of life, don't have young kids, anything like that. So maybe if you're watching this, you're like, man, they talk a lot about kids. I don't have kids. That we got you covered. But yeah, go to ignitechurch.com/marriage. We got some resources there. But yeah, go back, listen to this slow, and take a lot of notes because a lot of good stuff. But appreciate you guys, and go have a good marriage, everybody.
Go have a good marriage, everybody.
Bye. Goodbye.
Thanks, bro.